Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook video for today, Sunday, July 6th, 2025. Starting off with the National Hurricane Center in the Atlantic, we have Tropical Storm Chantal, which is now weakening over inland South Carolina and North Carolina after making landfall earlier this morning, roughly around 5 or 6 in the morning Eastern Time, and bringing lots of heavy rain and gusty winds to the coast. And Chantal actually strengthened to a pretty strong, or at least decently strong, tropical storm at 60 miles per hour before it made landfall along the coast. Now, as of the latest 8 a.m. advisory, it is down to 40 miles per hour, a minimum central pressure of 1,005 millibars, and it is moving north-northwest at 8 miles per hour. So definitely faster than it was moving yesterday when it was pretty much completely stalled off the southeast coast and not moving at all. But it's still moving very slowly. 8 miles per hour is definitely not fast at all compared to the average forward speed of a tropical cyclone, which is 15 miles per hour roughly. And that's going to play into the biggest threat, which will probably come out of Chantal, and that is the heavy rain that'll fall over portions of the Carolinas, including inland North Carolina, especially as we head into the early part of next week. And I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. Let's really quickly go to the Eastern Pacific, though, because there is activity, but it looks like the Eastern Pacific might finally be quieting down, because we have Invest 96E here, which has a 50% chance of development in the next 7 days. But just yesterday and a few days ago, Invest 96E actually had a high chance of development. I think the development chances on this actually peaked out at around 90% chance at one point a few days ago. But since then, it's really downtrended, and the models are no longer very enthusiastic about 96E developing here anymore. And there is another area of interest here in the Pacific that has a 20% chance, and the models too have kind of backed off on that. So activity has really kind of slowed down in the Eastern Pacific, and I guess finally it's happening because of how much of activity we've had since pretty much the start of last month. It was only a matter of time before things were actually going to begin to slow down in the Eastern Pacific, and it looks like that is finally happening. And I'll show you the models for that in a little bit. Here's a satellite image of the Atlantic and the Pacific right now. You could obviously see Chantal here, which is now inland over portions of southern North Carolina and over the Carolinas in general. I'll show you a close-up of Chantal in a moment. But here's the Eastern Pacific. You can see there's quite a bit of convective activity off the Baja, and then this convective area just south of it here off the Mexican coast is Invest 96E, and it still has a little bit of energy associated with it, some convective activity firing, but there's definitely some wind shear. It's struggled to organize, and it only has a little bit of time left before it probably won't be able to develop, and because of that, development chances are going down, and it's looking less likely that 96E will become our next named storm in the Pacific, although you do see there are a little bit other pieces of energy, and again, there's another area of interest. So we'll see what happens in the Pacific. But meanwhile, in the Atlantic, we obviously have Chantal, but besides that, nothing much else happening. There's some convective activity in the Caribbean, and then obviously in the Eastern Atlantic, bone dry, lots of Saharan air. The main area that we need to talk about right now is Chantal, which is now inland over North Carolina, or very far northern. It's pretty much on the border right now of South and North Carolina, and very surprisingly enough, still producing quite a bit of convection over land this morning. As it was making landfall, convection died down a little bit, but it's blown up in convection as if it's still over water, very surprisingly. And in fact, we also have these feeder bands that are also feeding into portions of eastern North Carolina. And this in general is going to feed into a rainfall threat that'll linger pretty much into the early part of next week. So the next 2 days here, we're going to be dealing with heavy rainfall over portions of inland North Carolina. And as a result of that, this is a excessive outlook threat, or this is the threat map for excessive rainfall. And this is issued by the Weather Prediction Center. And over portions of inland North Carolina, we have a slight risk for excessive rainfall or flash flooding. And this includes some pretty populated areas like Raleigh, North Carolina. There's also Wilmington here, which is also populated, and that's also in a marginal risk. And in general, we have a slight risk over portions of central inland North Carolina and a marginal risk that surrounds that, which encompasses pretty much the rest of eastern North Carolina and even portions of southern Virginia. So a pretty widespread rainfall threat. And I say this because I always mention rainfall is going to be the biggest killer when it comes to tropical cyclones. We just saw that a few days ago. And rainfall, and I should say that rainfall in general is the biggest killer when it comes to natural disasters other than tornadoes. And we saw that a few days ago in Texas, where we had very heavy rainfall. We had over 20 inches recorded in Texas, and it was actually partially caused by the remnants of Barry, which happened just over a week ago as a very weak, sloppy tropical storm in the Bay of Campeche, but the remnant energy of it made its way to Texas and dropped very heavy rainfall, again, upwards of 20 inches, and we saw dozens of lives lost, and it was not even a fully tropical storm, and it was inland too. So I'm saying this to say that rainfall is the biggest killer, and it often causes a lot more damage than people think, and it often leaves a lot of people off guard. So don't get caught off guard by the rainfall. Keep in mind that there is a threat for that heading into the next several days here. So keep in mind, please. Especially because there's probably a lot of people that are in the Southeast that don't live in the Southeast, because there is, a lot of people are probably down there this weekend to celebrate Independence Day, the 4th of July, which was on Friday. And they're going to the beaches and stuff like that. So please just keep in mind of the weather and stay safe, obviously. So really quickly, just going to move through the GFS here. Quite a bona fide signature that you could see on the 850 millibar vorticity with Chantal, especially right as it came into land here, really ramped up, especially last night. Really ramped up, again, got to 60 miles per hour. I think it weakened slightly to 50 before landfall, but either way, a pretty decent tropical storm. And yes, it is the first landfall of the 2025 hurricane season on the United States officially. And then it moved inland, and it will continue to move inland over the next 24 hours. And then its energy here will kind of remain over portions of North Carolina and the Southeast, and then eventually make its way into Virginia as we head into tomorrow. And then eventually some of that energy will then end up just off the mid-Atlantic coast, so maybe it'll bring rains to portions of coastal New Jersey. But at least for the Southeast, this will be a threat for rainfall for today and tomorrow. And then, obviously, it makes its way out of here by Tuesday, and then just really quickly speeding up towards the next 7 days in the Atlantic. Nothing much else happening in terms of tropical development. So luckily, after Chantal finishes up and moves on out, and we don't have to talk about it anymore, we will not have to talk about much else in terms of the tropics, at least for the foreseeable future in the Atlantic. And then I'll show you the Eastern Pacific really quickly before we finish up here. This is 96E, and it tries to consolidate a little bit, but it really struggles, especially compared to a few model runs ago when the GFS was showing it becoming a bona fide hurricane out here in the Eastern Pacific. It tries to consolidate, and maybe it still is somehow able to become a quick depression, but it's really running out of time. Sea surface temperature anomalies, and I've showed you many times, they're very cold in the Eastern Pacific, especially once you head out towards the open tropical Pacific. It's warm close to New Mexico, but we have the negative PDO pattern in place, and that really puts a lid on tropical development And that's what's going to affect, because it's going to move into cooler waters and development chances will effectively be capped. And it finally maybe is getting a hold on the season as a whole here in the Pacific. I mean, we go out to the next week, something else tries to develop, and maybe it's that other area of interest in the Pacific that's behind 96E, but definitely not as aggressive on development, I can tell you for sure, as the models were several runs ago. So there's definitely been a downtrend in development in the Pacific. So finally, we might see the Pacific quiet down, and we'll probably see a lot less action from there. And obviously, the Atlantic will probably remain quiet over the next several weeks because it's still the early season. It's still July. Even though we saw a pretty decent uptick over the last several weeks in the Atlantic, we're now on our third named storm, and we are a month ahead of schedule now in terms of Atlantic activity, even though just a few weeks ago we had absolutely nothing. So there's that. But it looks like, as for now, things are going to remain quiet. And yeah, that's going to be it. So with that being said, I'm going to end it off here. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please, I always recommend you to like, comment, subscribe, as always. Share this video with family and friends. And turn on the notification bell so you can get videos the moment I upload them. Whenever I upload them, because I do upload these videos every single day. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe. There's absolutely no costs at all necessary. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll be back with more tomorrow.